Shana Tova, everybody. I just want to start by saying how much I love being in this community. Being on this rabbinic team, first of all, is just such an incredible privilege. The ECAR staff is helping us in so many ways tonight, is so talented and so supportive. And you, all of you, I'm so grateful to be here with you. When I first arrived here a year ago, I'd spent more than a decade as a kind of a librarian rabbi, just like mostly just teaching and writing and surrounded by books, sweet books, all Torah all the time, and it was great. It was a charmed life, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something in my work was missing. It took me a while to figure out what exactly it was, but it turns out that in a very real sense, it was you. It was you. The incredible power that comes from being in a spiritual community, in an ethical community. Think about what we're gathering together to do right now. We're about to embark on 10 days of thinking deeply about how we're living, what's working, where we're falling short, what kind of human beings we're trying to be in the world. And we do that together as a community, standing side by side. There's something mighty about that. So as we turn into this intense period of reflection on our actions, I'd like to focus our attention tonight on one particular area of behavior, the realm of chesed, or kindness. Actually, when I discussed this with Rabbi Brous, she felt that chesed would be better translated as love. And that's also right. And actually, the standard translation one often sees is loving kindness, an attempt to combine the two. So somewhere in that general area. But the rabbis developed an entire ethic around this virtue of chesed, a category of deeds that they referred to as gmilut chasadim, acts of kindness. And they said this was a supremely important area of human action. One of the things they said famously that the world stands on. And they also said that there's no limit, ein shiur, to how much you can do them. So what are these gmilut chasadim? Maimonides gives us a list of some of the classic examples. Visiting the sick, comforting mourners, making a shidduch, matchmaking, walking guests out and seeing them off, helping with any aspect of a burial or a funeral or a death, and bringing joy to a bride and a groom. And we could add to this list, we have an intuition for the kinds of things that go on here, anything from helping someone move to wishing someone a good day. But how do we define this list? What exactly constitutes an act of kindness? It's helpful to contrast these examples with the other great category of actions the rabbis were obsessed with, mitzvot, or commandments. They're commanded, they're obligatory. So if mitzvot are good things that one has to do, then gemilut chasadim are good things to do, but which one has no particular obligation to do. It may mean the world to them, but you don't owe it to them. They don't deserve it. So this is the area of good actions where, on the one hand, there's no limit. I can, and it seems like I should, do them as much as possible. But on the other hand, I don't actually have to do them at all. If someone is sick, it's good to visit them, but I don't have a particular obligation to visit them. If someone is getting married, it's good to dance at their wedding, but I don't have to dance. So why is it so important to the rabbis, then, that we do these acts of kindness? You might say, well, it's the right thing to do. But if that's really true, then make them mandatory. And if I don't have to, why should I focus on these things when other things are actually essential? Be kind, the rabbi says. Oh, well, that's really sweet. But did you know that the world is falling apart? I'll work on being honest in my business. I'll work on cultivating ethical eating practices. on fighting the oppression of the stranger, on the critical stuff that I am obligated to do. Tell me, why should I take my precious time and energy to be kind? But I think we know why. I think most of us know from experience. I'll tell you, the first time this year I visited someone in the hospital in my official capacity as a community rabbi, someone who had just undergone major surgery. And on my way up the elevator, I was nervous. I'm thinking, I hope this isn't awkward. I hope I don't feel like an imposter. I hope I don't say anything stupid. I hope it goes okay. Well, it went fine. The guy I was visiting was very gracious, welcomed me right in. And I didn't have to worry about what to say because I soon realized that it was better if I just listened. So I asked him questions, and he talked about what had happened, about how close to death he had been, how intense the recovery process was going to be. And then we talked a little about the fear of mortality, about the preciousness of life, and about the wonders of modern medicine. And I was so moved by his ability to sit there and reflect on this incredibly intense process he was going through. And I began to just feel like, oh my goodness, what an exquisitely lovely human being this is lying here in front of me. I'm so grateful he made it. And I told him so. And of course, he was grateful too. And we prayed a bit together, and I wished him a refuah shlema, a full recovery, and I got up and I left. I went back down the elevator and walked out the sliding doors and stepped out onto the sidewalk. And all of a sudden, I was overcome with something. My heart was flooded with some kind of intense emotion. I had to stop for a second and gather myself. It was definitely a pleasant feeling, but I hesitate to call it just pleasure, because it was a feeling of everything being right with the world and me being in my right place. A feeling of tranquility, but also euphoria, all in one. And a sense of being deeply connected to everything in the way that made me profoundly grateful to be alive. What was happening? What was this feeling? But then I realized that it was familiar to me. Oh, yes, this is what it feels like to do something good for somebody else, something that you don't have to do. I mean, in this case, I actually did have to do it because it is my job after all. But I got that feeling anyway. I got it almost for free, almost as if it was a natural byproduct of the action. And I've also been on the other end of that exchange. I remember when we sat Shiva for my father, we were a motley crew, a hodgepodge of various divorces and remarriages, and it was my aunt, my stepmother, my stepsister, my brother, my half-brother, and my half-sister, and people came to see us, and I saw the pain and compassion in their eyes, even when they were uncomfortable. But the one thing that I really remember was that my stepmother's sister, my step-aunt, I guess, lived downstairs, and she didn't actually say much to me over the course of the week, but she would come up every hour with an enormous plate of food. For us, for the guests, and there were a lot of guests, but it was too much for anyone to keep a pace with. That woman did nothing but cook and serve food for a week straight. It was a very Jewish affair, like a lot of sorrow and a lot of overeating. The pictures of us at the end of that week, we looked so ragged and sad, but very well fed. little plumper in the cheeks than you would expect from mourners. That woman did us such a kindness, such a tremendous chesed. She fed us when we were too dazed to feed ourselves. She didn't have to do that. And I couldn't really process it while it was happening, but when I see her, when I even think about her, and I remember her coming up the stairs with trays of baked ziti and sponge cake and watermelon, I get a trace of that same feeling in my heart, even when it's mixed with pain, of being connected to something deep and true in this world, something that makes this difficult life worth living. And I think we know that feeling that comes when someone does something kind for us, or when we do something kind for them. Sometimes there's a moment where our eyes connect and we see how grateful they are, or they see how grateful we are. And suddenly we're filled with something good and healing. So what is that feeling? And what has it got to do with kindness? So to answer that question, I'd like to turn to another department of Jewish thought. I said there was a Jewish ethic of kindness, but there's also a Jewish theology of kindness. This tradition takes as its jumping off point a phrase from Psalm 89, Olam chesed yibaneh. The world is built on kindness, or built on love. Okay, so it's poetry, but the rabbis of the Midrash and the medieval period have to ask, well, what does this mean exactly? So they say it means that the world was created as an act of kindness, so that God could do good, could be kind to us. But by the time we arrive in the Kabbalistic period in the 1500s, there are new ways of talking about God. God manifests in the world, acts in the world, and creates the world through various attributes: wisdom, strength, beauty. And kindness, chesed, is one of them. In fact, the actual creation of the world can be understood then as an expression of chesed, because the universe emanates forth, gives forth, expanding into being, and would expand infinitely if not for God's gevura, or strength, which creates the boundaries of our existence. So all of these ideas are synthesized through the centuries and inherited by one of the great Jewish thinkers of the 20th century, Rabbi Yitzchak Hutner, the Pached Yitzchak, they call him. He writes his philosophy through these beautifully crafted little essays on the holidays. And in the first essay on Rosh Hashanah, he summarizes the theology of chesed perfectly. God's kindness, he says, is revealed to us from the very fact of the coming into being of creation. Olam chesed yibaneh, the world is built through kindness, as the verse says, which means that the essence of the movement of the world from nothing into something is an expression of the kindness that forms, listen to this beautiful phrase, the source of all the infinite delight in the world. Makor le'oneg bli gvul. The world is not built on kindness, but through kindness. Chesed is what we call the force that gives forth a universe for us to dwell in, to delight in. Because, after all, the universe did not have to be or deserve to be. It is given forth freely unto us. So kindness is not just a way of being, it is at the very core of being itself. And that is why, I would like to suggest, engaging in gemilut chasadim, acts of kindness, creates this good feeling, this nourishing feeling of joy and connection. Because when we act with kindness, we are actually participating in the fundamental movement of the universe. We are in sync with the flow of all things. By engaging in acts of kindness, we reach deep into the essential nature of reality and touch this great current which animates all of life, everything that is. When we treat one another with kindness, in a sense, we become expressions of the divine will, of the essence of being, of God itself. Then we are in harmony with the world. And that state is the feeling of bliss that is available to us, that is almost an inevitable consequence when we perform acts of kindness. And so, I am grateful to be in a community that takes chesed seriously. And I'm standing up here talking about it, but I have to say it's really Rabbi Kayla Labelle who is at the heart of it all, who attends to all the calls that we get, letting us know who's in a vulnerable place, and with superhuman effort coordinates a vast network of people in this community, many of you, to help bring chesed to us all. Rabbi Labelle is the only reason I ever get a hospital visit, so it's really her that we have to thank. And I also want to salute folks like the Zilbersteins, who started the Giddy Kindness Project in honor of their beloved son, as a way of encouraging people to keep Giddy's memory alive by engaging in random acts of kindness to make people smile the way Giddy did. Not because he had to or because we deserved it, but because that was his nature and because it is the nature of the world. And all of you. I see so many of you all at each other's shivas and at each other's simchas. I'm proud to be in a community that takes chesed seriously. We do perform these acts of kindness. But we could do more. And in this moment, I think, we must do more. I wanted to speak about kindness and its effects this year because we're living through a difficult moment in our history, a time when many of us feel that the world is not at all a kind place. And as we try to figure out what we can do to get out of this mess, our focus is often on the very real damages that are being done to real people in our society. The policies that need changing, the institutions that need saving, the rights that need protecting. We spend a lot of our time talking about these things, and we must, especially during this season of reflection. But there's something else happening in our country. Something more subtle, but just as devastating as any policy change, which is that we are receiving a constant message from the highest offices in the land that kindness doesn't matter, that kindness is weak, that it's all about winning. Winning and not caring about anyone else, because we are the best, the first, the strongest, the greatest. And anyone who stands in our way is a fool, a loser, to be ridiculed and disparaged. And don't tell me to help the most vulnerable, and don't tell me we ought to take care of each other. I do what I am obligated to do, barely. And that's it. This life is a battle for survival, and it's kill or be killed, everyone for themselves. That is part of what is happening in our country. While we exhaust ourselves fighting battle after battle over the issues, in the background, without our noticing, we are being robbed of our decency, of our humanity. We are losing a basic cultural assumption that it's good to help one another, that it's worth our time to be kind. And when the dust settles, whatever leadership or policy changes may be wrestled back, if by then we have lost our capacity for kindness, we will have lost everything. We will have lost our connection with one another and perhaps our connection with the universe itself. Because it's all a lie. All that meanness, it's a denial of reality. For that is not the way of the world. The world is built on kindness, on loving kindness. The fact that we are here at all is an expression of such tremendous kindness we can't even fathom. We owe everything to that kindness. So let us, this year, commit to kindness. Kindness as an act of resistance. Let us fight back with kindness. When we visit the sick, we are fighting back. When we send food to those in mourning their dead, we are fighting back. When we dance at each other's weddings, when we dance, we are fighting back. When we smile at someone at the checkout counter and tell them to have a wonderful day, we are fighting back against the cruelty, the selfishness, the indifference that seeks to poison us all. It's the new year, the day the world was born. Hayom Harat Olam. It is precisely the time to tune in to the great gift of being itself. Let us thank God for our existence by acting as God does, El Rachum V'Chanun, with mercy, with compassion, and with kindness. Wishing you all of us, Rav Chesed, abundant kindness, abundant love in this year 5,780. Shana Tova.